He was the only one in it. Janice comes in the background, but there's Muma dropping that Earth Shatter. There's a charge onto the Transcendence. Oh, and he's gonna knock him off! What an angle from Muma, just dropping Jonak.
This week in the Overwatch League, ESPN calls out Dallas Fuel's player Taimou for anti-gay slurs on stream. The Philadelphia Fusion, Dallas Fuel and Outlaws all hit rough ground after promising starts, and we've got all the latest news and the best highlights of the past week.
This is the stare of Pulse Bomb. Pulse right there, sticks it! Later, dog! 3 kills again from Soon!
So sick.
Let's start with the recent ESPN article calling out Dallas Fuel player Taimou. Written by Jacob Wolf, the article refers to comments made by Taimou during a stream on the 23rd of January.
Fuck off, stupid fucking faggot kid. Uninstall.
According to the article, a community member reported Taimou's comments to Blizzard when they were first said, but so far Blizzard has made no public response. This was later brought to ESPN's attention, who then spoke to Dallas Fuel directly. Dallas's spokesperson responded that they were not aware of the incident. As of making this video, Blizzard has not responded. These comments were made on the 23rd of January, just days after Dallas Fuel's other player, XQC, ended up in hot water after comments on his own stream landed him with a $2,000 fine and suspension. The last thing Dallas needs is more drama and another potential suspension. However, one thing I would say that ESPN left out of their report was that Taimou immediately said on stream that he was accidentally toxic and didn't mean it.
Accidental toxin.
How Blizzard responds to this will be very interesting, and some community members have called Jacob Wolf a hypocrite for using similar language himself in the past. However, as he doesn't work for Blizzard, this doesn't really change Taimou's situation. We will keep you updated as the story continues, but let me know in the comments below. Does this feel like a witch hunt by ESPN, or do journalists have a responsibility to bring these kind of stories into the light? Let's get back into the action on stage now, with Philadelphia Fusion and what went wrong for them against the London Spitfire.
And London just seemed to understand them so well at every turn, Matt. They dictated the flow of the game. And they're the ones that take it home very comfortably.
They started out stage 2 with a dominant performance in the first week, and their wins continued into this week with a reverse sweep over the Houston Outlaws on Thursday. However, when they came up against the London Spitfire, things went very wrong. They lost 3 maps without getting a single objective, and only just managed to get the first checkpoint in the last map, with the Spitfire stopping them shortly after.
Oh, it's all but over, and the Spitfire! Oh dear! Okay. Nautical miles ahead of their opponents right now.
So what's happened? How did Philly go from crushing it and looking like one of the best teams in the league to being completely picked apart by London? Well, the biggest thing was London's positioning and movement to counter Philadelphia's dives, and they put on a masterclass. Every time the Fusion went to dive in, London would just outmaneuver it, and in turn, isolate someone on the Fusion for an easy kill. Sometimes it would be Fraggy, caught without his jump available and no diva to protect him. Other times it would be the supports, or an overextended DPS.
For the London Spitfire, they're going to use it just to keep Gesture up as he's pushing both supports back.
Legacy Bedosin also wants a bit of the action. He found Boombox as he popped out of that Transcendence.
London clearly put in a lot of planning and practice. We saw them not field some of their star players against the Mayhem earlier in the week, so they definitely focused hard on finding the right counter to the Fusion's dive. So can Philadelphia come back from this? It's certainly possible, but in week 3, they'll be playing New York and Seoul, 2 top teams that have now seen how London beat them. Next we have the Dallas Fuel, who looked much improved in week 1. We saw them funnel resources into getting AKM into the right position to let him destroy the enemy, and it secured them 2 victories. But in week 2, this same tactic is what cost them. They seem to be investing even more resources into keeping AKM alive, generally protecting him with supports, leaving XQC in effect to try and make space, which saw both of them being ripped apart without much healing or protection.
People down into that, that's the timing they wanted. This has been an uncharacteristic round for a fact.
Up to 6 deaths, he's in the lead.
Their game versus the Valiant in particular showed this off. They kept killing XQC in effect very quickly, and that meant AKM and the supports never got the space they needed to set up, and they were constantly being shut down by Soon's Tracer, who was hardly ever being kept in check.
This is a beautiful camp. He's going to get Harry before he can even come back into this fight soon with this spawn camp dirty.
So can Dallas fix this? Well, they have an easier week next week against the Shock and the Mayhem, both teams below them in the standings, but neither is a sure win. one of the biggest problems facing this team seems to be morale. Whether it's clashing personalities, bruised egos, or just not enough coaching support for the players, it's not clear. But we are now over a third of the way through the entire season, and this team just can't seem to get things together.
The pills at the end. Guys, listen. We have to call. If Effect want to touch, you call.
Yeah.
If you're not gonna touch, you say. If we say nothing, we lost.
Lastly, we have the Outlaws. We already talked about their loss against the Fusion, which was incredibly close, so we can't really hold that against them. But just like the Fusion hitting the wall of London, the Outlaws were stopped dead in their tracks by the New York Excel. However, with that said, the 4-0 scoreline doesn't really do the game justice. While New York did take an easy win on the first map, the other 3 games were much more competitive.
With the Hanzo and the Widowmaker.
Losing to the top team in the league isn't that bad of a situation. However, losing 4-0 is brutal to their map differential, which could come back to bite them in the future. I certainly wouldn't count this team out, however. They might have the exact same record in Stage 2 as the Dallas Fuel, but the Outlaws have played some of their toughest games already, so their level of competition going forward should be a bit lighter.
Aren't you, Dayfly? You're next, Neptuno! Rack him up and him down. It's the links away from start to finish.
There were plenty of other great games this week as the teams really start to settle into this new meta. The Valiant look to have stabilised after a shaky first week. This was entirely expected, and they now seem to be looking a lot happier and more cohesive in the new meta.
Pulse Bomb goes in soon afterwards. They're going to use the sound barrier to keep everybody on Valiant healthy. Soon the demect already. Miro soon to fall. No help there.
Seoul also picked up 2 more wins, making them the only undefeated team in Stage 2. However, their level of competition has been quite low compared to the other top teams.
Here we go, Munchkin coming in from behind. He's got the pulse bomb. That was a stick. That's 2 kills. Full support's taken out by Munchkin.
The San Francisco Shock had a good game against the Valiant, but still lost out in the end. However, they made up for it with a decisive 4-0 victory over the Dragons.
Towards the box of victory here for San Francisco. It'll be a self-destruct that comes in with an Earth Shatter as well, and that's going to be 2.
Nomi, Audrey and 5 to get down there. The self-destruct didn't claim its target, but perhaps it just didn't have to.
Speaking of the Dragons, they had another bad week, not only losing to the Shock 4-0, but also getting the same result against the LA Gladiators.
Baby Bay gets bowled over by Dia though. Sleepy's position's about to get assailed. Yeah, he's going to fall. Drop down as MG there, really starting to do the cleanup quite nicely.
The Boston Uprising suffered their 3rd 4-0 loss of Stage 2 against the New York Excel, but they pulled things back with a 4-0 victory over the Florida Mayhem.
Neko gets the kill, but Striker you can hear that one clip full of headshots. The dink. Chain.
He's got a huge chance now. That's a huge pulse bomb onto there. There goes Swoosh. There goes Tamik. There goes the chance for Florida.
The London Spitfire had a great week with a victory over the Mayhem and a crushing defeat of the Fusion.
2 kills for him, and Prophet chimes in with a kill on Zupa and 1 more on Swoosh. Well then, Hex, you did it. Both DPS stepping up in a big way here for London Spitfire.
Tamik got killed with his
God.
They're on him.
The Florida Mayhem lost both of their games this week, but they did manage to take a map off the Spitfire, which was enough to keep them above the Dragons in the Stage 2 standings.
EMP comes through here for Hureg as well, trying to turn things around, but it's just not going to be enough. They did a great job of sticking together, Florida Mayhem, and finding those kills.
The LA Gladiators picked up a big win over the Shanghai Dragons, as well as an acceptable loss against Seoul. We also potentially have some big news about this team, which we'll get to in the signing rumours a little bit later.
A lot of ults to work with, man. 5 coming into it. A lot of momentum. Transcendence used right after that EMP. Oh, but there's a double kill for Asher. Again, Gladiators really finding the opportunities here coming in.
The New York Excel finished the week with 2 4-0 victories under their belts, extending their map differential to +30 overall, which is huge. They still sit behind Seoul in Stage 2, but have played a much higher level of opponent, so there is a good chance that New York will overtake them before we reach the playoffs.
Beautiful play from Sabiobi. Millisecond kind of reactions. Deadeye was going on. He blinked past the McCree. McCree pivoted. He touched the cart during that, recalled back, reset the timer on that cart that allowed the team to come in. That was amazing.
Although both teams stumbled at the end of this week, the match between the Philadelphia Fusion and the Houston Outlaws was undoubtedly the best match of the week.
There wasn't a whole lot of faith here from the desk going into halftime, but as this series played out, Johnny started getting more and more excited. He started getting out of his chair. He was yelling, getting fired up.
What an insane game that was.
This was a battle to see which team would stay at the top of the standings. Houston was coming in with a solid record since Stage 1, while Philly had a rougher time in the last stage but hadn't dropped a single map so far in Stage 2, but that record didn't last long. As we entered the first map, Philadelphia seemed to be playing just like they did last stage, all over again. Fraggy was once again diving in without Poco or any support and getting destroyed by the Outlaws.
There it is. We wondered, what would this match look like, Matt? Will it be as close as we had hoped? This is not a good start.
The Outlaws continued to overwhelm the Fusion on the first round of the poll with a surprise Bastion, and although the Shock fought back on map 2, the solid tank line of the Outlaws was enough for them to win the second map.
And with Poco moving to the point, Pulse Bomb claims Coolmat. Now another tactical visor. Raucus comes forward just to exacerbate that with the Transcendence in play. Carpate found Coolmat's back with the Pulse Bomb, and Lynx is there. Carpate's removed. Oh, I saw that. Poco copped one in midair. Does finally go down, and the Outlaws have got it. Okay.
Coming back after halftime, however, Philadelphia regrouped and refocused. Both teams had a very close game on Hollywood, but in the end, it was Fusion getting the win and keeping themselves in the game.
Poco's in position to go for a self-destruct here, open up some space, he has to use it now. He purposely died for the self-destruct himself, but Carpe! He found himself both supports with the Pulse Bomb, got into the back line and gutted the Outlaws.
Then on Route 66, the Fusion mounted a dominant defence, thanks to some fantastic EMP usage, and then with a scrappy attack round, they managed to tie it up at 2 maps each.
Now the Fusion waiting for their chance. Shadowman chooses to get out, but he's invisible now, so he just drops him wherever the heck he wants. And you know he's looking for old mate Raucus. He's found him, EMP in, no shield available for the Omnic Month, and he is turned into fancy, high-class jewellery.
Everything then came down to the wire on Ilios, with the Fusion taking round 1 before the Outlaws hit back in round 2. It went to 99% each in the third and final round, but in the end, it was the Fusion who claimed victory.
Once again, the Philadelphia Fusion reverse sweep the Houston Outlaws. Once again, one of the best games of the stage.
With just a month left in the player transfer window, we've had another big wave of rumours out of Korea. Nothing here is official, but the majority of rumours have come true so far. One of the most exciting being mentioned is Void joining the Gladiators. They recently traded Fisher from London, and this has been a big step up for the LA team. But if they are also picking up Void, Fisher's old teammate and Diva player, this could give them one of the best tank duos in the league. These rumours also suggest that Architect and Hyobin will be joining the Shock, while London are said to be picking up Tizzy and Deeding. Lastly, Dallas are also rumoured to be signing main tank player OGE. Also, one confirmed signing that happened just as our video went live last week was that Gambler is now officially being confirmed as a part of Seoul. So as we take a look at the overall standings, we can see the biggest change was from the Outlaws dropping down thanks to their 2 losses, and as a result, Seoul, London and the Valiant all jump up a spot. In the Stage 2 standings, a lot has changed, which is to be expected this early in the stage. It's still a bit early to start looking at who will be making the playoffs, but it's worth noting that London and New York remain in the top 3, even though both teams have played a very high level of competition in most of their games, while Seoul has had a much easier road to their first place spot. Looking into next week, we have some great games, including the second battle for LA as the Valiant and the Gladiators face off on day 1. On day 2, the Valiant have another exciting game, this time against the Houston Outlaws. Seoul vs Philadelphia will also be interesting to see if the Fusion are able to plug the holes in their game that London exploited. On day 3, the Fusion are in action again, this time against the New York Excel, and London will be looking for revenge against Boston after they beat them in Stage 1. Finally, the week wraps up with the Florida Mayhem versus the Dallas Fuel, which could go either way in this new meta. Which matches are you most excited about next week? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, this is James Lacasse saying thanks for watching, and enjoy the game.